Hello there, Chris the Contemplative checking in. I really found a funny meme, not very well known, called LSD on Thanksgiving. And I have no idea why. I mean, actually, I do have an idea why, but this is pretty good stuff, I have to say. Essentially, it's a meme that pokes fun of how drunk and high many people get on holidays. Um, it's quite a phenomena among the young, but some of the older people in Western society to avoid, in a very hardcore way, many of the people they're going to be meeting on holidays, or to enhance it. And I just find this to be a hilarious thing to stuff um, drugs in the turkey because you can't deal with the holidays. And it's definitely something that tickles my funny bone and made me chuckle a few times. But it also made me think as to how another data point as to how much we have lost the spirit of the holidays and our spirituality. Um, Honestly, many people don't think much of drugs and alcohol anymore, and usually it's because they don't really think much of anything beyond the material. But to me, when I see people do stuff like drugs and alcohol on a holiday, I really see some extreme irony because these were meant to be spiritual days, right? Christmas, even Halloween, Thanksgiving, and now people are so lost in the dark as to the true meaning of these things. They're ironically doing something to kind of simulate what that day really is about. And um, I also find very strange the psychotomy going on in society. You have these people who pretend they didn't know what Woodstock is, like they didn't live during their times, a lot of them parents. Like they don't know, at least if not from experience, from knowledge, intellectual knowledge, what the drug culture is about, the LSD, the Jimi Hendrix, the marijuana. And at the same time, they don't want their children to get involved in it, even though they themselves rebelled against the traditional Western archetypal society because they wanted something to fill that void. And then they're telling their kids to do as they say, not as they did, which is really weird. And then on the other hand, you have people who are in a minority, but devout Christians who go around telling people how they're so much better than those who do drugs and alcohol, but never take it to the point where they have an understanding that their spirituality is supposed to replace those things. So they hold on to their little religious ceremonies and their spirituality, and they use it to look down on those lost in substance abuse or just doing recreational substance usage. And they pride themselves on that without really giving much of an olive branch to those that don't know any better, who are drinking too much eggnog on Christmas, who are spiking turkeys with LSD. And the holiday of Thanksgiving is a very interesting context for this phenomena of people using substances to avoid family members, or to enhance their holiday, because it is a very spiritual day. And sadly, when people drink or do drugs, they don't realize that not only will these not really satisfy any part of their soul, they're just substances. They cause sensory and emotional manipulation through the brain, but it's nothing that's lasting. And I really haven't seen that many profound insights from those that have done LSD. I mean, nothing that impressive to me. Um, but they don't realize that there is a much deeper experience in experiencing the spirituality of these holidays because it's connected to God, who is the ultimate experience. So if you're drinking and you're doing drugs to escape something, well, the point of Thanksgiving is an escape. It is to escape from the material decadence and busyness of our lives. It is a time to relax and enjoy the simpler things. Um, but also, if you run into people that look down on you for different things, well, you may be running into the puritanical culture passed down from the Puritans in Thanksgiving, a very dark shadow of what the holiday was supposed to be. Um, there were during the time of the pilgrims, there were good pilgrims and Puritans, and there were some very abusive ones. They were notorious for being extremely strict and harsh and sucking the fun out of everything. Also being rather bigoted towards many of the Indians later. Not the first wave of pilgrims; they got along just fine. But people that came afterwards that still ascribed to the same denomination, they seem to sadly become very stuffy and arrogant about it. And it's just very interesting that when you look at the current culture of, let's say, cultural liberals when it comes to holidays and cultural conservatives, um, both do not seem to appreciate the holiday. It seems that Mark Deist put out a video on this strange phenomena of leftists hating Thanksgiving for different crazy, wacky reasons. But I also have to say that many cultural conservatives don't really appreciate it either. Thanksgiving was meant to be a day of prayer, of rest, of a semi almost contemplative spirit, I would say, like what we do here on this channel, where you are letting God in to the day to enhance it. So you really shouldn't need the LSD in the turkey or the eggnog that's spiked or the Prozac spiked turkey, because it's supposed to bring out this childlike spirit of being thankful. And that's what I would also like to cover. This is a video discussing this, but I will also be having a discussion on Thanksgiving this Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern. You can come out to learn more about this. But I will also be talking about the collision of spiritualities that is from two different ways of thinking about the world. And the latter, which is true, authentic Christianity, and the former, which is the what I mentioned first, this Woodstock, post Woodstock, recreational drug, new agey culture. Um, they they really are not talked about in such a depth that anyone can understand how it's affected our culture. So uh, there's a lot of people who think Christianity is all about rules, right? And many of them rebel and go do other things. But if you really follow the saints and authentic disciples of Christ, Christianity is the ultimate in creativity, and Christianity is very transcendent and it is joy filled. And then you look at the LSD Woodstock understanding of spirituality, which came out in the 60s, and you'll notice that it's also creative, but it really doesn't have that much depth or staying power. You really, despite all their claims of how spiritual they are, um, many of these so-called liberals became normal boomers who eventually became just corporate busybodies, or they became authoritarian leftists, quite opposite to the hippie culture. Or they got so weird and wacky that you just don't even know what you're looking at anymore. And they just seem like they're unofficial asylum mates. So there's such a lack of introspection. And it just makes me really wonder about how important it is to understand the meaning of Christianity, which can be seen through Thanksgiving, that Christianity is supposed to transform the spirit. And what is the spirit? The spirit is that part of the soul that resonates with God, that resonates when it's in the grace of God, that resonates with love and joy and beauty. And most people think it's a religious institution. And that's pretty much all spiritual means for many Christians. And on the other side, um, the post hippies think spirituality is a kind of connecting with your subconscious and your mind through recreational drugs and things, which really, I've looked it up, it's really a scientific effect. There's really nothing spiritual about it. Many of these drugs simply, and alcohol, right? But they bind with receptors in your brain. It gives you an emotional, pseudo spiritual feeling. And um, it really doesn't give you any matters of faith. Many of these people that are into this don't really have anything to look forward to in the afterlife, and they don't really have any objective values or reason to get up in the morning, which just leads them to do more drugs. So there's some emptiness on both sides. It's sad, and I think it'd be funny for me to bring up Thanksgiving with this whole cacophony of differences of opinion. Um, and especially considering the fact that, again, we have a huge amount of Catholics in the United States where I live, and so you have these people who don't believe in the Eucharist or sin, but when they do become post hippies, they will take a substance orally that they will swallow, and they believe that you need to be in a meditative, good environment, right? I mean, if you've been around people that have done hallucinogenics, they usually say, yeah, it's unpredictable. You have to be in a good environment where you can really vibe out. And when they take these particular recreational substances, they always seem to talk about how the ego needs to die, and we need to be less selfish. At the same time, you look at what they have walked away from, and surprisingly, in Catholicism, you have the Eucharist, which we believe is the living God in flesh and blood, with the same principle. You have to be in a good state of grace. You do have to abandon selfishness. You do have to go against the ego. You do have to be in a good state to receive the graces of the Holy Eucharist. And there is a spiritual experience. Now, many people aren't taught what it is and what to look for, but it's just, you just see these ironic, strange aspects of our culture as it falls apart, where people think they know one thing, but they're hypocrites in another, or they really don't know anything at all and they just assume things. The same seems to be going for our respect and reverence of the holidays. And I will go into that as I usually do for holidays. I like talking about Easter and the depth of Easter. I talked about Halloween, and now I'm moving on to Thanksgiving. So I hope to see you all there, and we'll have more fun discussions about the wacky behaviors on holidays as well. See you soon, and have a happy and wonderful and blessed Thanksgiving. Take care.